I referenced the Melania director drop in the Epstein files. Now I want to do a deeper dive into, over the weekend and a couple days before, some of the newest revelations, and they're insane. I kind of am a little bit shocked given all of the cover-up that we saw from the Trump administration. I don't know if I expected them to release this many damning tidbits. A part of it feels like accidental. There's so many documents that a bunch of staffers who are less partisan are like, all right, here, I'll redact this, put this in the document. And they're dumping documents, and then they panic and will delete links and then re-upload links and freak out. So that freak out post-release, some of this stuff makes me think that a lot of what they revealed about Trump and others was a little bit of an accident. So we'll get into that in this segment. But first, here is Trump saying he just might have to sue over this all, which please sue. I want Trump to sue, whether it's him suing Michael Wolff, which is threatening, or the Epstein estate, because that litigation process, I think, would expose even more. But here's Trump.
Mr. President, what did you think of the latest release of Epstein files, and do you think your critics will be satisfied with?
Well, they should be, because it looked like this guy Wolff, who's a writer, was conspiring with Epstein to do harm to me. And I didn't see it myself, but I was told by some very important people that not only does it absolve me, it's the opposite of what people were hoping, the radical left, that Wolff, who's a third-rate writer, was conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to hurt me, politically or otherwise, and that came through loud and clear. So we'll probably sue Wolff on that.
He's not going to end up suing. He does not want to be subject to discovery. He doesn't want more things to come out in court. He's just saying that as a threat.
I love money. And maybe the Epstein estate, I guess. I don't know, but we're going to certainly sue them.
And then he's saying he also wants to sue the Epstein estate. Now, how there was a conspiracy to hurt Trump politically that's Michael Wolff's fault or Epstein's fault, when to believe that, given where some of the documentation and record of this relationship dates back to, would have to be a conspiracy that was aware Trump was going to get into politics in 2015 that dates back to the 90s. I don't buy it. But in these documents, you do have a lot of disturbing photos. Just the quickest break from the video to request that you click the subscribe button. As you know, that's an important way to boost the message that we deliver to a larger audience, which is very important. Helps us out, but it's completely free on your end. Just by clicking that subscribe button, you help support our work. Epstein with very young girls. This is Prince Andrew. Also photographed. More of Epstein, more of Epstein, more of Epstein. You can see with the redactions to protect people's identity. But to get into some of the newest revelations, Midas Touch reports, whoa, this is from an FBI email with the subject, R.E. Epstein-cellmate interview. Here are the summaries provided by the FBI agents. About Trump. Redacted stated Epstein introduced her to Trump, who subsequently forced her head down to his exposed penis, which is subsequently bit. In response, Trump punched her in the head and kicked her out. Redacted, remember Epstein introduced her to Trump saying, "This is a good one, huh?" And Trump responded, "Yes." Now again, the response from MAGA is, these are just allegations. People could have submitted defamatory claims to get them on the FBI record at this point or that point. But then some of the things are just records of emails that couldn't have been an anonymous tip or anything like that, and were just people talking behind the scenes that often lines up with some of the allegations. But I agree, there could be false allegations. The layers of these being documented, the number of documented allegations, the timeline lining up on some of them and not other ones, and then like this one substantiating a previous document that we saw, does give more credibility as more gets released, and that should disturb you. And then we're going to come back to Howard Lutnick, because Howard Lutnick is a ginormous liar. And then there's stuff about William Barr. Redacted stated was at Epstein's for a model event, ran into Barr, who stated he wanted to see her next time he came. At another point, Epstein asked if she had ever met Barr. NTOC, Redacted claims she was a victim of Epstein and that Barr was present during some of this abuse. So just Now an allegation against William Barr. Remember, Barr was the attorney general and Trump was the president whenever Epstein died in his prison cell. And Barr was tasked with investigating him. And Trump was Barr's boss. So, to the MAGA conspiracy theorists out there, if you weren't desperate to defend Trump at any cost, what would you make of those plot points? Brian Krasenstein saying massive breaking. A witness swore under penalty of perjury that Donald Trump threatened a young girl, telling her she could disappear like another 12-year-old female, and then threatened to kill her entire family, according to Epstein-related court documents. Names the data set. This is sworn testimony. If the witness fabricated this account, they would face multiple years in federal prison for perjury. There's it. Photographed. So again, just a lot of allegations. And this is something that's really important for, you might not be seeing this based on the spaces you're in, but because I see a lot of right-wing accounts, I've been seeing so many, oh my gosh, liberals are so stupid. They think just because someone submits a complaint or a unvetted allegation that they should take that as gospel. Just remember, as we continue through these different bombshells, this, Sarah Longwell reminds us, Epstein was convicted in 2008 of procuring a child for prostitution. He was registered level 3, highest risk of reoffending sex offender in New York after 2010. Everyone emailing him and hanging out with him after that did so knowing he was a child sex trafficker. Or at least a child sex, a trafficker. So Elon's exchange with Epstein asking for an invite to the island are after Epstein was a convicted sex offender. Same with Lutnick, Bannon, Brett Ratner, etc. And that's a really important thing to remember because you hear the response. And in a sense, it does seem like this was the assumption a lot of prominent people were going off of, which was, who knows? I've heard some things, but who knows? I'm just going to still go into business. But if you think rationally, you go, before almost all of the emails that we've been going through over the last few days and that we will today, before all of these different documented examples of people, especially people in the Trump administration, staying very close to Epstein and others and Democrats, not Joe Biden, not Obama, but was after he was already a convicted pedophile. That's not the exact terminology, but a convicted child abuser. Now he got this sweetheart plea deal, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he was already proven to engage in that behavior. And it was after that Elon's going like, take me to the wildest party, Jeff. We'll get into the next segment. Or Lutnick, after telling us that he never saw Epstein after this one interaction he had.
It's gross.
Yeah, despite living next door to him. He's showing up going, hey, I'm going to take me and my kids to the island. Literally. And then this is the other part. So that we can't forget as we continue through this. I think even in my explanation, I've forgotten that in a way. And I've been like, well, I guess that was 2010. So that was a while before. Nope. But the other thing is the right-wing influencers themselves, who were so obsessed with the Epstein files, went to the White House, got their Epstein files Part 1 binder. So many of them have gone silent now. And then lastly, before looking at more things, is this the stuff during the show I'm going to read or after? After? Okay. The other crazy thing is, a lot of the conspiracy theorists about issues like this or QAnon that would depict a global cabal of pedophilic, satanic people would create these worldviews and theories that incorporated a lot of mystery and vagueness. And when they say, we're going to go to the train station, they really mean we're going to get a kid. And there would be and you have to put all the pieces together. One of the more shocking revelations out of all this is that apparently the powerful, pedophilic elites literally just say, can I go to the island? is it gonna be a wild party? Like, they just say it. They just say it. You really picture that, oh, they're gonna use code, and then it's like, hey, you got a fresh batch? Like, pretty obvious statements. Trump in 2012 said, gotta do something about these missing children grabbed by the perverts. Too many incidents. Fast trial, death penalty. JD Vance in 2021 said, remember when we learned that our wealthiest and most powerful people were connected to a guy who ran a literal child sex trafficking ring, and then that guy died mysteriously in a jail, and now we just don't talk about it? Well, he's not talking about it lately, so he just described himself. I referenced Howard Lutnick. Just a few months ago, he gave an interview and said this. Listen to it, because then I have a document to show you.
I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage?
So this is him talking about in 2005. He went to Epstein's house because he moved in next door to Epstein. Whoops. It was told by happenstance. And went in there and immediately was weirded out. And then he's going to say he never saw him again.
And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now, my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross. And so I look back.
I don't even know if we have time to once again comment on the numerous strange elements of that clip. I said at the time when we covered it originally that Lutnick was giving too much detail, and that made me suspicious. And now I'm right, because he knew he was lying. And you might think, no, he might not have known he was at a fundraiser and Epstein was there. He didn't realize. Okay, you're going to see the email. It wasn't that. It was him emailing Jeffrey Epstein himself going, can I come to the island with my kids? But already, you should be suspicious whenever someone is telling what could be a lie based on the circumstances and they give excessive detail. So then, I didn't even show the whole clip, but in the whole thing I remember, he's like, and then he was 2 doors down from us. So we walked 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 6 steps. We knocked on the door, a nice wooden door, one of the little things that you could knock in. It was metal, but we didn't use it. We knocked with our knuckles. Took about 3.5 seconds for him to open the door. Sort of short. I was surprised by that. I looked at my wife. I smiled. He offered us in. They had a doormat. And you're like, you really don't want us to think you're lying here. I think you are. And now we know he was.
Ooh, the deep nuance of Howard Lutnick.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of a voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
that's
he
my
was-
story. A one and absolutely done.
Shut up. And then Miranda Devine the whole time. Oh, really? Oh. Someone responded, he was so troubled by what he saw that he brought 8 children
I
to
say to
Epstein Island in 2012. So let's look. What do they mean by this? BBC, U.S. Commerce Secretary Lutnick planned Epstein Island visit. Emails show. And let's look at the email ourselves. Hi, Jeff. 2012. In 2005, I walked into the door. I saw that he had a nice chandelier. I remember it so distinctly because I can tell you that I was so disgusted, and I knew that from that moment on, my wife and I decided we would never ever be in the same room with him. 2012. Hi, Jeff. We're landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon and planning to head over to St. Bart's, Anguilla on Monday at some point. Where are you located? What exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? I have another couple, Michael and Marcy Larman, with me on my boat, and each of us has 4 children, 2 16s, 2 14s, a 13, a 12, an 11, and a 7-year-old. Thanks, Howard. So, best case scenario, He's just saying, we're on a family trip. So for some reason, I need to tell you the age of all of my kids and their kids. And the best case scenario is the worst case scenario. Like, obviously, worst case scenario would be those aren't his kids and they're like being trafficked, but I'm not assuming that. It sounds like he's talking about his own kids. So he was so disgusted by Epstein that he brought and specified the ages. What was it? 8? Each of us 4 children? 8 children to Epstein's island after saying, I knew he was gross. These are psychos with at least how much they lie. This is after Epstein was already a registered sex offender against children. And he's bringing 8 children to his island. By 2012, there was already a whole stink around that island. Such pathological liars, too. Did you see here how specifically he went and we decided we would never see him again? You're emailing him. Then Sarah Longwell says, 5 years later in 2017, Jeffrey Epstein donated $50,000 to an organization in Lutnick's honor.
Yeah, they're both very...
Look at this clip now, okay? With that in mind, when Trump was asked, are members of your administration having a damage control meeting about how to handle the Epstein files? Could you do the zoom in thing on his face before I'm going to get Jade to zoom in on Lutnick's face. Watch his face as Epstein is brought up and he desperately tries to prove to us that he's not concerned.
Very good.
Mr. President.
The two Kevins, very good.
Mr. President, is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and
What on earth is that? Look at this. There's not even a joke told, and he starts combusting into laughter.
This evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation.
I don't know.
Ugh. So weird. So dang weird. Epstein writing to Richard Kahn, attached is resume of Lutnick nanny. I'm trying to arrange a time via Peter for you to meet her. That is in 2013. That's in 2013. Not 2013. 2005, he said he never was going to talk to him again. And but despite him never interacting with him out after that, he did in this interview seem to know a heck of a lot about Epstein.
That's what his MO was, get a massage, And what happened in that massage room, I assume, was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
I assume it was on video. He had a massage room and he asked me to get a massage. I said no, but was there a camera? It would have captured me saying no, but was there a video of it? Joshua said, all of these North Korean style cabinet meetings start to hit differently when you consider that Trump could have blackmail on each of them. That's another way to look at it. Some of this is very speculative, to be clear, but I'm just saying, you start to wonder, is that why they're all so petrified of Trump? Trump was like, hey, Bondi just showed me all the stuff in there about me. That's not good for me. But there's stuff in there about you too. We don't know. A contributor Barry Weiss hired at CBS was emailing Epstein about a fresh shipment and said, pussy is low carb. The biggest problem about becoming friends with you, the life you lead is so outrageous, yet I can't tell a soul. Plus, Barry's wife was friendly with Epstein. It's just all a big club. Then Joshua Reed Eagle said, do you remember QAnon? Okay, this one's going to blow your mind because this is kind of QAnon-esque, right? The stuff we're really learning. It's not QAnon, but it's kind of QAnon-esque. The MAGA conspiracy that originated on 4chan's poll board that claimed the country was secretly run by a satanic pedophile cult that raped and murdered children and that Donald Trump was the hero destined to expose it all. Turns out the founder of 4chan and Paul was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. His name showed up in yesterday's document dump. So maybe the QAnon conspiracy came from a place of self-guilt and projected it onto the politicians they didn't like. Because again, think about that theory. That theory was that there was an elite pedophile ring. Now, it went far beyond, because now we're going, wait, was there not an elite pedophile ring? It went far beyond the bounds of what we believe to be real, like I don't know if this was drinking the blood or something, like something even further, or like Hillary stretching the mask of a baby over her face or something like that. And all these voters believed the epitome of the evil of the Democrats was that all the Democrats and then the rhinos they didn't like, the Republicans they didn't like, were a part of a pedophile ring. Even ones that you have no evidence of that. And so then they had to put Trump in to drain the swamp, expose the pedophiles, defeat the deep state. And they elect Trump. And then Trump's like entire administration, it seems, are the most named people in these documents. So like the real pedophilic elites, as much as you could describe something as that, the closest thing we've ever gotten to one of these conspiracy theories is Epstein. And to take down the pedophilic elite deep state, they elected the guy who, as far as candidates for office in that year, well, this gets tricky, was the closest friend to Epstein. Like, they picked the guy who needs to be exposed to expose. Mind-bending. One email to Epstein from someone who's redacted, which why? This gets on my nerves. Whenever they'll redact, I'm like, there's no way this is a victim emailing with Epstein. Says why, and then Epstein responds, Trump will be there, doesn't like black girls, calls them, is that a slur? I don't know. Won't go within 10 feet. So maybe that was Epstein in 2013 conspiring against Trump for his eventual political career, but seems bad. And watching all the different people who had, and again, there are people who just had business engagement with Epstein and looked the other way, and they should be judged for that, but that's a different level of judgment than others. Watching them try to explain this, like Howard Lutnick, is painful. So in Howard Lutnick's case, he at least was articulate, which made it even creepier, where he had practiced. You could tell he had practiced his response. So I'm going to take you back to 2005. Remember what was going on back then. You had this band that was popular. Just set the scene. He was already too prepared. That was one issue. Then you have Peter Thiel. So a different issue, which is he's clearly completely unprepared as to how to answer these questions. On screen, you see the email, which is Peter Thiel saying, that was fun, see you in 3 weeks, to Epstein. And this was his explanation on Rogan as to how he met Epstein.
I met Epstein a few times as well, and I think...
How'd you get introduced?
It was Reid Hoffman in Silicon Valley introduced us in 2014, but it was basically, and I didn't ask enough questions about it, but I think there were sort of a lot of things where it was fraudulent. I do think Epstein knew a lot about taxes, and there were probably, these complicated ways you could structure a nonprofit organization, especially as a way in a marital context that I think Epstein might have known a decent amount.
Yeah, so I remember the last time I went and sat down with my business manager to talk about finances and an accountant. When I left, I emailed them and said, that was fun. See you in 3 weeks. No, I remember that. I remember we were getting deep into taxes. Is there any way we could reduce my taxable income? And And I said that was fun when I left, which is what he said in the email. What a fun time. What a blast. My, what do you call it? My financial advisor. His name is Kev. And I've never told Kev that I had fun with him. I've never told him I had fun with him. Because it's never fun. No, but I'm not alleging or doing it on Peter Thiel's part, other than all of them being in the wrong for associating with a guy who already was proven to be a child abuser back in 2008. But he knew about taxes. Okay, a lot of people know about taxes. Surely he wasn't that much of a savant on taxes that you're like, oh, I think he's the only one I can go to about this. Then Steve Bannon was Epstein's best friend. And I don't think enough of us are talking about this. But if you're a fan of Steve Bannon, a lot of MAGA people are, you need to stop if you care at all about this topic. He's texting out the wazoo, doing interviews with Epstein, totally doesn't care about Epstein's abuses. In one text exchange, you have Epstein. Do we know if this is Epstein? This is alleged to be Epstein. Do you know Marianne, Donald's new friend? Madeline Westerhut? Very funny. Steve Bannon says she is the receptionist. Good kid. Grundoon. Cam from RNC. And then Epstein says knee pads, doing God's work. Bannon says LMAO. Epstein said he's much more calm, but the sight of him in the residence in his undies is hard to fathom. I'll give you details when I see you. Okay, so that's alleged to be Epstein, but you have all these different conversations between Bannon and Epstein, and that should be focused on a little bit more. Brett Meiselas wrote, the more is dug up in this latest Epstein files drop, the more this release feels like a Panama Papers moment. This was not only a release showing the depraved behavior of wealthy people involved in sex trafficking, but also how they used the levers of power to get what they wanted, to manipulate public opinion, and to increase their power and influence. Exactly right. CoffeeZilla responded to this headline. Slovakia's PM's national security advisor resigns over Epstein links, and says, crazy that in the rest of the world, the Epstein files are actually having consequences, but in America, nobody seems to be affected. That's driving me crazy. Like, you are seeing in other countries, when someone gets caught up in the Epstein files, they resign or they lose their title or there's some backlash. And here it's like, people just move on. And we should not move on from any of this. We should not move on from the fact that apparently Kash Patel just lied under oath in a hearing. You remember him saying this?
There's no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
This is funny. I've referenced sitting down with a financial advisor. Joey said, I'd rather sit with my financial advisor and watch than watch the Melania movie. True. Very fair point. No, and if Kev's watching, I have a good time with you. I do have a good time with you. I have lots of fun. But it's just not the most fun topic ever. And we do have to do the backdoor contribution, but if you want to go ahead and open up a new brokerage, like, oh my gosh, that was fun afterwards. And then Todd Blanche, so Kash Patel lied there. Todd Blanche comes out and goes, hey, despite the majority of the documents still not being released, it's over, we're done.
Your release on Friday has already received a response from the victims, from Jeffrey Epstein's victims. I want to show the statement right now. It says, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed while the men who abuse us remain hidden and protected. This is outrageous. The Justice Department cannot claim it is finishing releasing files until every legally required document is released and every abuser and enabler is fully exposed. Will there be more releases?
I mean, look, first of all, we took great pains, as I explained on Friday, to make sure that we protected victims. We are talking about a review of 3.5 million pieces of paper that were released on Friday. Every time we hear from a victim or their lawyer that they believe that their name was not properly redacted, we immediately rectify that. And the numbers we're talking about, just so the American people understand, we're talking about 0.001% of all the materials. And we knew this. I said this on Friday, that of course the nature of this type of review was so the volume of materials that were reviewed, that there would be times when this happened. And so we're working hard to make sure that we fix that, and I expect that will continue.
Will more documents be released?
We have released, there are a small number of documents, as I said on Friday, that we're waiting for a judge to say we're allowed to release because of a protective order. But this review is over. I mean, we reviewed over 6 million pieces.
This review is over. Calling it quits. Which, in a sense, given what we've learned, makes sense that they're going to go, you know what, I guess we'd rather go back to breaking the law and not releasing everything than continuing this shit show. But it's kind of like, damn it, well, there's probably even worse stuff. But in a sense, if at this point someone still doesn't have enough to say, I don't know exactly down to the allegation which ones are true and which aren't, but I've seen enough. All these people knew who he was, were all up in his business, we're all friendly with him, and for that alone, not a single one of them should be trusted in public office again. We've seen enough. So go ahead and release everything like the law demands, as opposed to saying, what are we at now? I think I did one quick check with ChatGPT, and it was like 40% maybe now after a really big tranche just got dropped, but regardless, not close to the end. And he's saying the review's over. And so I just want to thank MAGA. I just want to say thank you, or thank all the people who voted for Trump. You have now set up the American government where it feels like every other person in the administration was in some way concerningly connected to the world's most notorious, America's most notorious sex trafficker. So good job. And for the people who I haven't seen tons of reporting about, are already dealing with their own problems. So like, some of them are really connected to Epstein. Some of them just have interview clips like this.
And also a sexual assault allegation from one of your former nannies. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah. Sorry. The article is a lot of garbage. The picture that they said is of me eating a dog. It's actually me eating a goat in Patagonia on a whitewater trip many years ago on the Futalefu River. They say there's an expert. They have an expert that has identified that as a dog carcass.
Yeah,
it's just not true. So, and in terms of their allegations, I've said this from the beginning. I am not a church boy. I am not running like that. I said I had a very, very rambunctious youth. I said in my announcement speech that I have so many skeletons in my closet that if they could all vote, I could run for king of the world. Mm-hmm. So, this Vanity Fair is recycling 30-year-old stories, and I'm not, going to comment on the details of any of them, but I am who I am.
So, did you sexually assault the nanny? And after a minute of filling time, he says, I am who I am. Trump found liable of sexual abuse. Lutnick lied about his relationship with Epstein. Elon lied about his relationship with Epstein. We'll get to that next. Melania's director is photographed with what look like girls along with Epstein. Bannon, top MAGA influencer, former Trump advisor, besties with Epstein. And all of you who voted for Trump made sure that instead of that being a bunch of random famous people that concern you about the state of powerful elites and their abuses or their relationships with abusers. Instead, it's just a Trump administration roster. Instead, it's just, here's the White House roster. What are these files? Now, again, there's other people. I referenced the CBS example, and we looked at the Bill Gates mention, and obviously Clinton, a bunch of friendship examples of him with Epstein, and all those people should be judged too. And right now we have a particularly saturated administration with people showing up in these documents, and that's because of a bunch of voters. Good job. Hey, good job.